Okay.
Okay, so
It's actually, I think, started recording, but
okay,
I have to
see.
wait for this
So
to finish before, or maybe I can just minimize it.
yeah.
Oh, but here it comes.
Okay, so
Yeah, now I gotta mute that.
it's actually, I think, started recording, but I have to wait for this to finish before, or maybe I can just minimize it. Yeah. But here it comes. Okay, so yeah, now I gotta mute that. It's actually, I think, started recording, but I have to wait for this to finish before, or maybe I can just minimize it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now that that cacophony is past.
So that is somehow that's the actual recording that it's simultaneously doing this thing somewhere.
Yes, and because it wasn't muted, it then became a part of the humor.
Okay, so I see four brave friends who join us here. And we're gonna, maybe everyone can just say hello, but after that, I would like the questions to be in the chat because I would like to get through the entire sutta. And if you have a question as we're going along, then put the question in the chat and then we'll go over the questions. We did this at Empty Cloud and it worked really well. That way, because some people are shy about asking questions or they forget something else comes up and they forgot the question that they had at the beginning, and it's an important question. So this is, I would like to do this format for the sake of completeness and inclusiveness of those who would like to ask questions. So the sutta we've chosen for today is Bhante Sujato translates it as Salha and his friends. And because it's, or his friend, he has a companion along with him. This he's a Brahmin youth. And it says that he's Migara's grandson. And so he's got pretty high standing Brahmin youth with his friend. And there's a reference to we'll see that as we read the sutta. But then they go to visit a venerable, it's Nakula. Nandika, okay. Venerable Nandika. I was thinking of another name. Venerable Nandika. And so then there's a conversation that takes place.
I also like to say that Salha supported the bhikkhunis, just as a side note, but I just found that out.
One of the and I think, well, we don't have to go so much about the background about the individuals here, other than that they're high-standing youths and they're probably highly educated in the Vedic tradition, and so they're going to speak with Venerable Nandika.
Oh,
and you have something else you want to say about Salha?
Yeah, he supported the bhikkhunis, but then he seduced one. So let's just drop that part. Yeah.
That might have been, I don't know, never mind. We could speculate about those kind of things, but so we could start with the sutta.
That sounds so much more wholesome.
And we're going to screen share.
Okay. All right.
So this is Bhante Sujato's translation, and Ayanika has Bhante Bodhi's translation, and we're going to look at both of them. I'm inviting Ayanianika to read, just especially point out anything that's different. I like to look at different translations because sometimes the English word is lacking. It's hard to get one word that encompasses the meaning of some of the Pali words. They're often multifaceted. So I'll start reading. So I have heard. Now at that time, the venerable Nandika was staying near Sawati in the eastern monastery, the stilt house of Magira's mother. Then Salha, Magira's grandson, and Rohana, Pekunia's grandson, went up to the venerable Nandika, bowed, and sat down to one side. Then the venerable Nandika said to Salha, "Please, Salha and friend, don't go by oral transmission, don't go by lineage, don't go by testament, don't go by canonical authority, don't rely on logic, don't rely on inference, don't go by reasoned train of thought, don't go by acceptance of a view after deliberation, don't go by the acceptance of competence, and don't think the ascetic is a respected teacher. But when you know for yourselves, these things are unskillful, blameworthy, criticized by sensible people, and when you undertake them, they lead to harm and suffering, then you should give them up." I also has a Venerable Nyanamoli, who was the original translator of the Majjhima Nikaya version that we see, the wisdom publication. Bhante Bodhi took his manuscript and after his demise and did a little editing and annotation. And that was the original Majjhima Nikaya published by Wisdom, and has both Venerable Nyanamoli and Bhikkhu Bodhi's name on the hard copy I have before me. But for some reason, Bhante Sujato chose Venerable Nyanamoli's translation to put up on Sutta Central. And what he says is don't simply go by what, how does he? I have it here. Yeah, we have several translations going at once. Don't be satisfied by hearsay or with tradition or legendary lore or with what has come down in the scriptures, with conjecture or with logical inference, with weighing evidence, with a liking for a view after pondering it, or with someone else's ability with thought. Or the monk is our teacher. When you should know in yourself these things are unprofitable, liable to censure and condemned by the wise, being adopted, they lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them.
Yeah, I think that word satisfied, it's not actually in the Pali itself. However, he probably pulled it out so the English speaker would understand it's not that these things are bad to use as tools, but they're not actually fully satisfying for the goal.
And then I think it's either Bhante Sujato or Bhante Bodhi. I've heard them both speak. This paragraph here is in the Kalama Sutta. Some of you may recognize it. And this is a kind of, it's not a carte blanche to just think for yourself and throw everything out the window. But not just these things. We should investigate and know for ourselves, is this a cause of harm if we undertake this belief system or this, it's like, it's talking about some things that a lot of people really cherish, like is, canonical, where's
The text.
the text, a canonical authority. Not to go by canonical or oral tradition would be, the Brahmins would go really strictly by oral tradition. And some of the beliefs they had were, the beginnings of the caste system. There's certainly a really strong class system at that time. Is it going to cause harm to oneself or others? So this same paragraph, as I was saying, is in the Kalama Sutta. So the Buddha is saying not just kind of be gullible and follow what other people say.
Maybe just in case, I think this group may know, but the Kalama Sutta is like one of the most famous ones for do this, don't just believe the teacher, do it for yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. There's kind of this, some people take that sutta and represent what the Buddha is actually saying.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can just think for yourself and not worry about what, tradition and stuff like that. And some of it is beneficial.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be like, oh, I'm gonna make my way to the highest mountain in Europe and not have a map?
That would be, yeah.
Yeah.
So we follow but this, the guides would say, this is the best route. This is the safest route to take. This is the quickest but dangerous. This is a slow one but safe. And so you could think, but decide for yourself, following some instruction. So there's canonical authority. What's come down in the scriptures is another translation. With conjecture, with logical inference. So inference, don't rely on inference. Inference is important in daily life. And we can learn a lot we can't experience everything that everyone in the world has experienced, but we can learn from other people's mistakes and other people's successes. But I think it's just, well, like I was saying, it's not just by this, but knowing for yourself as well. And then a lot of people are taken in by someone's appearance of confidence. And he says not to think the ascetic is our respected teacher. Well, you can have a respected teacher, but don't just follow just because they said so. It's this word garu is like guru came from it, and it also means like well respected and weighty. So this is really trying to discourage gullibility. So here, this next line is, what do you think, Salha? Is greed real? How does
Is there greed?
Is there greed?
Is greed real?
Well, it's atta lobo is or loba. Is there? Does it exist? Ati is to ati is, does it exist? And that's a kind of interesting question to ask somebody. And when I was an anagarika, I was translating this and struggling with what the meaning of all this was. And ati, does it exist in oneself? Does it exist in the world? Is it real? That's a reasonable way to take what he would be saying. But I think there is some element of, does it exist in oneself? Can you see it in one yourself? Does it exist in the world? And
Here, if we look at the,
yeah,
see,
ati,
ati, all right, but this is with the longer I. It does seem that it also applies to the one, you know, there is both, does it exist in the world, and also does it exist in you within that word, because the seeker themselves is within the word ati.
yeah, it may be in a different context that
Mhm.
when they talk about ati as a seeker,
Right, but
but there
the
is
Buddha was
that seeking within, yeah,
oneself.
yeah, seeking for something. Is there just desire, seeking maybe?
Yeah, but the Buddha was a master of puns. So I feel like this could have been one of those little refinements of humor as well. And also penetrating through using the language of the time.
Yeah, so this is maybe why I came to the conclusion he's sucking out within as well as out externally. So then there's this word abhijati, and it's translated as covetousness. And how does Bhante Bodhi? It's an old-fashioned word. Coveting is
Longing.
longing. Oh, that's a good translation. Does longing exist? Does covetousness exist? Is there? Is it? Is it within yourself? Ah, covetousness is what I mean by this. A person who is greedy and covetous kills living creatures, steals, commits adultery, lies, and encourages others to do the same. It is for their lasting, is this that for their lasting harm and suffering. So then, as you notice, these Buddha, I mean, not the Buddha, but Nandika is doing this inquiry with Salha.
Oh, right. This is Anandika, but
Nandika is helping Salha think for himself by asking these questions. So, and you may notice too, this is 4 of the 5 precepts. They're breaking the 4 of the 5 precepts. And what do you think? Is hate real? And that's dosa. And is it pretty much the same?
yeah, ill will. Yeah.
Ill will. Okay.
Well, I say this means ill will. Yeah.
Oh, that's the next part. Okay.
Hatred.
Okay. So malice is what I mean by this. A hateful and malicious person kills living creatures, steals, commits adultery, lies, and encourages others to do the same. Is that for their lasting harm and suffering? Yes, sir. Okay, the vyapada is ill will, usually translated as ill will. And malice, that's pretty similar to be malicious, hateful, wishing harm on others. And this is moha, I believe, delusion.
Yeah.
Moho. Ati moho. Is there delusion? Is it real? Yes, sir. Ignorance is what I mean by this. A person who is deluded and ignorant kills living creatures, steals, commits adultery, lies, and encourages others to do the same. Is that for their lasting harm and suffering? Yes, sir. What do you think, Salha? Are these things skillful or unskillful? Unskillful, sir. Blameworthy or blameless? Blameworthy, sir. Criticized by or praised by sensible people. Criticized by sensible people, sir. I think it's criticized or
Praised
by
by the wise.
By the wise, yeah. This is
because it seems a little odd that he would say sensible when it's kind of in the list of things above. Don't just go by what seems sensible, but go by what's wise. And wisdom has more of a full experiential vector than
Yeah.
just sensible.
So there he is talking about social mores here where you look to other people, but who are you looking to? Who do you, people you consider wise would be who you would look to. When you undertake them, do they lead to harm and suffering or not? Or how do you see this? So he's asking the same question again. When you undertake them, they lead to harm and suffering. That is how we see it. And then he repeats again. So, Salha and friend, when I said, please don't go by oral transmission or tradition, don't go by lineage, don't go by testament. There's something about hearsay is actually one of the translations. Don't go by canonical authority. Don't rely on logic. Don't rely on inference. Don't go by reasoned train of thought. Don't go by the acceptance of a view after deliberation. Don't go by the appearance of competence, and don't think the ascetic is our respected teacher, but when you know for yourselves, these things are unskillful, blameworthy, criticized by sensible people, and when you undertake them, they lead to harm and suffering, then you should give them up. That's what I said, and this is why I said it. So this is in the Buddhist time, they repeat things to help with memory, because a lot of people, I don't know if there was actual much writing at that time. I think there were some scribes, but it was like really rare. And most of it was memorized.
Thus the emphasis on oral tradition, I think.
Yeah. And sometimes we can just go by what was said before without thinking about it. If we see it's causing harm in the world, certain behaviors that we just assume to be okay, or certain ideas about things that we just because other people said so, or then we should really question it. So it looks like he's repeating it again, once again.
Well, now it's in the positive. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's really emphasizing this. So maybe just like taking these youths, these Brahmin youths under his wing, and he really wants to emphasize this point to them. How are we doing on time? I won't read that once again. You can see it, and you hopefully have access to either something online or an imprint version of this, but we'll read this again. This will come up again. So he says, after he's repeated that, okay, but when you know for yourselves these things are skillful, blameless, praised by sensible people, and when you undertake them, they lead to welfare and happiness, then you should acquire them and keep them. So, yeah, you could take some canonical authority and realize, yes, this is really helpful. And the behavior that it's recommending is beneficial and leads to happiness. What do you think? Is contentment real? So contentment is translated as how? And
Here it's non-greed. I think contentment is being a bit positive
okay,
spin.
okay, this is
Yeah,
this is aloba. Aloba is
yeah, the absence of.
the absence of, but then it sometimes it's, yeah, they do. Contentment is a really good
It's the sensation you may have if there is the absence of greed.
well, there's the absence of greed, and then there's a spectrum, and then if you're content, then there's no reason for greed to arise. Um, so satisfaction is what I mean by this. A person who is content and satisfied doesn't kill living creatures, steal, commit adultery, lie, or encourage others to do the same. Is that for their lasting welfare and happiness? Yes, sir. What do you think? And this is adosa, and some people think that that means metta. But the spectrum is also true here too. So there's the absence of hatred, but then there's the development of loving kindness. And Bhante Sujato translates, I think there's some chats coming
Okay,
in,
I'll
but
I'll check the chats,
well,
but you go ahead and
we
keep
should
going.
we should probably keep going, that we can get through it, because this is it does this interesting very interesting turn here after we get through this part of this interaction here. So is love real? Kindness, so here we have the aspect of metta, is what I mean by this. A loving, kind-hearted person doesn't kill living creatures, steal, commit adultery, lie, encourage others to do the same. Is that for their lasting welfare and happiness? So how does Bhante Odie translate that one?
He sticks more with the non-hatred and then goodwill. I say this means goodwill.
Ludo, one not greedy, and abhyapado, goodwill, kindness. So this is actually in the Pali translation. It is. Well,
yeah, we'll get to that.
We'll get to this when because okay, so
click over here.
Where is the cursor?
To
it's over. Oh, here it's over way off.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I don't want to click it. So so instead of having what do you think, Salha, is understanding real? So instead of delusion, which was moha, he has translated it as non-delusion is it's a moho, and then he says vijati. Okay, that's the knowledge. So avijja is ignorance, and vijjati, that's vijja. Vijja is knowledge, knowing. Is what I mean by this. A person who understands and knows, doesn't kill living creatures, steal, commit adultery, lie, or encourage others to do the same. Is that for their lasting welfare and happiness? Yes, sir. What do you think, Salha? Are these things skillful or unskillful? Skillful, sir. Blameworthy or blameless? Blameless, sir. Criticized or praised by sensible people? Praised by sensible people, sir. When you undertake them, do they lead to welfare and happiness or not? Or how do you see this? When you undertake them, they lead to welfare and happiness. That's how we see it. So, Salhan, friend, when I said, please don't go by oral transmission, don't go by lineage, don't go by testament, don't go by canonical authority, don't rely on logic, don't rely on inference, don't go by reason, train of thought, don't go by acceptance of a view after deliberation, don't go by the appearance of competence, and don't think the ascetic is our respected teacher. But when you know for yourselves, these things are skillful, blameless, praised by sensible people, and when you undertake them, they lead to welfare and happiness, then you should acquire them and keep them. That's what I said, and this is why I said it. Now, this is the big shift here. Then that noble disciple, rid of desire, rid of ill will, unconfused, aware, and mindful, they meditate, spreading a heart full of love, compassion, rejoicing, equanimity, to one direction. So you notice the ellipsis here, that means that in sequence, they may be doing this one at a time. Loving kindness, or metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha in turn to one direction, and to the second, and to the third, and the fourth, in the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around. They spread a heart full of equanimity to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity, and free of ill will. Would you please read how Bhante Bodhi has translated that?
It's so close. Yeah.
But you could read it anyway.
The above below part.
No, starting then Salha.
Then Salha, that noble disciple who is thus devoid of longing, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness, with a mind imbued with compassion, with a mind imbued with altruistic joy, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Thus above, below, across, and everywhere, to all as to himself. He dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with equanimity, vast, all four of them, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity and without ill will.
So this person has purified themselves through body, speech, and mind. And then they're able to have this this all-pervasive metta, all-pervasive karuna, all-pervasive and completely undefiled state of mind, mudita and upekkha, and it's very transformative. So if you're having trouble with any of the Brahma Viharas, one recommendation is to look at the hindrances, if they're occupying the mind or not. And also, if your actions through body and speech are you purifying them? At least to get these in abeyance and just be working on purifying your behavior and speech and mental states. This is a support for the Brahma Viharas. But what's interesting here, so they've gotten to a point where they're rid of desire, rid of ill will, unconfused, aware, mindful. And I think there's sati sampajanya in there too. Aware and mindful, that's clearly comprehending, I think is how it's translated. So their mind has become very pure, and they've pervaded the four quarters or all 10 directions with the four Brahma Viharas. And then they understand there is what is worse than this, there is the better than this, and there is an escape beyond the scope of perception. Knowing and seeing like this, their mind is freed from defilements of sensuality, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When they're freed, they know they're freed. So this is very interesting. I've come across a couple of interpretations of what this actually means. And this also appears in the simile of the cloth, this very paragraph here, exactly. Just a different interpretation. And I have the notes here from that. It's Bhikkhu Bodhis, and he says, the present section shows the non-returner's practice of insight meditation. So they've got to a state of non-return. And Nyanamoli said this pervading in the four directions like this, or the 10 directions, whichever it is, indicates stream entry. And then they attain non-returner, and the insight practice of a non-returner aimed at arhatship, and the following section, his attainment of arhatship. The praise, there is this, signifies the truth of suffering. There is the inferior, the origin of suffering.
There is this refers to what?
The truth of suffering.
Oh, he skips. Okay, so there is this refers to the five aggregates. I think something might be missing from, and then the truth of suffering.
Well, let me finish.
Oh, okay.
Let me finish.
Okay, good.
So the five aggregates are dukkha.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the Buddha says, and if you examine the five aggregates, you can see there's definitely dukkha involved with these five aggregates. If you don't know what the five aggregates are, it's a whole other, it's going to take too long to explain what it is, but we can see there is dukkha, and there is the inferior is the origin of dukkha, the superior is the truth of the path, and the escape from this whole field of perception is nirvana. Mm-hmm. So he's directing these Brahmin youths to full awakening, but starting out with examining the presence and absence of defilements and their impact on your behavior. Oh, I hit that by mistake. They understand rebirth is ended, the spiritual journey has completed, what had to be done has been done, there is no return to any state of existence. They understand formerly there was greed, which was unskillful. Now there is none. So that's skillful. Formerly there was hate, which was unskillful. Now there is none, which is skillful. Formerly there was delusion, which was unskillful. Now there is none. So that's skillful. So they live without wishes in the present life, extinguished, cooled, experiencing bliss, with self become divine.
And that last one has a comment in the Bhikkhu Bodhi translation. And he says this lessons is basically co-opting the terminology from the Upanishads, which it would have been what these youths had been studying. And so he's co-opting it into a Buddhist worldview framework of nibbana versus this divine. So he's co-opting the terms.
So we could say sadhu for this teaching, and then we can go to, there's more than one question?
Kat had asked about the name of the sutta, and so the Kalama Sutta is the one that appears in the Anguttara right before this one.
This is a
365.
Something it's AN 3.65, and this sutta we're looking at now is AN 3.66. And I'm sorry that well, you could probably
the
see
Salha.
it on Salha Sutta. And then looks like Holly has a few friends who are on contemplative Protestant Christian path. This is a major difference. I am so glad the Buddha and his disciples espouse the teachings like this. It's like the Buddha trusted that inquiry on precepts would come to see these truths of virtue.
I would say that it's even more than that. It's not just the inquiry into the precepts. Should we close the share, the text share?
We could leave it here in case somebody has something that they want to point out.
Okay. So it's more than just the precepts. If you notice what precedes the precepts in this sutta is the presence or absence of greed, of hatred, and of delusion. So we can follow the precepts. I know plenty of people who hold to the 10 Commandments, and yet internally they're killing, or Buddhists too. Now you're externally holding the 5 precepts, but internally you're murdering that person. That's got a lot of hatred and delusion still in it, and it's not liberating just to hold the precepts. But as you actually start to experience the precepts and the benefits within, then it leads to liberation. And I think that's what the Buddha was trusting.
Well, yeah, and this whole thing of inquiry is important because you do start out with something that you can see, it's apparent in your daily life. Internally, if you're experiencing hatred or delusion or greed, if you start really experiencing what that is like, it is suffering in itself. It is leading to harm. It leads to harm, not only leading to our behaviors through speech or through physical actions, but you can see that the harmfulness of those mental states, how it really deteriorates not only your mind and your body. It has an impact on mind and body. So do people have questions at this point? Let's see how we've got about 15 minutes left.
Type in any questions that you may have around this sutta.
We also have time here if someone just wants to ask.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'd like to just talk, if I may, without writing.
Go ahead.
Can we go back up to the second paragraph?
Certainly. Second paragraph. About all the please don't go by oral traditions, etc.
Yeah. Right. So I just wanted to share my experience of this is based on what something I've been working with more lately, and that is this to see and know without any words. And which to me is a huge challenge, without labeling, without without conceptualizing to experience something directly. And I mean, this is the gist of, what the guidance is here, that, don't go by what arises externally, and also by, to me, through your own mental formations, uh, because they're essentially um, symbolic, or, tertiary representations of the truth. So, um, so if we take, for example, the practice of the precepts, um, what encourages our practice is the non-verbal experience of joy or warmth, and your heart opening as a result of practicing these things for a while. And, at some point you just sort of notice that. But, insight and, spiritual knowledge is actually obstructed by trying to understand it with words.
Well, there's,
And so to me, when I'm, really working at this, it's you're sort of the edge of, uh, the mind is going on about the subject matter, but I'm trying to experience it through my body, uh, which, you know, in that context, the words can't enter. And 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 the only time, I really feel like I know anything or have insight is when I experience it without the words.
so
So
there,
that's,
okay.
some of this brought up for me.
Okay, all right. So you're talking about when the seen is only the seen, maybe, and the heard is only the heard, and the sense is only the sensed, and the cognized is only the cognized, and the Buddha was saying, then you'll
Yeah.
see there's no thing there, and there's no thing in any direction.
Actually,
So this is the non experiencing non-self, perhaps. But when I think there's there's definitely some use of words in communicating
oh, for sure.
yeah, but what you're talking about is a deeper experience. I mean, we have to have a little bit of guidance, and just
Well,
going to the
the
mountain.
guidance is, to me, and the reason you don't take the guidance as the thing you're looking for. The guidance, kind of sets up uh, a faith structure.
Right. So that
Um,
it's like
and it's a guide.
the map to show you where to go to get
Right.
to the mountain.
You don't
Yeah,
even.
it's not saying, the guy, I mean, obviously I'm sitting here listening to teachers. Um, so it's not like that isn't really important. And it's, and Sangha, in particular, in terms of supporting your practice, and all these other aspects of that, they keep reiterating here, but you don't get to the truth uh, until you have that nonverbal experience.
Yes, and the experience of the interruption of the verbal when it happens is very interesting. So if you are in an experience and the habit of verbal comes in, feel it. Feel what that verbal overlay does in the experience. And your mind will learn it's unnecessary. It'll stop, relying on that verbiage. So when you begin to have experiences that are just experiential, knowing, and then the labeling and whatnot comes into the mind, taste that. And then you can decide if that's a flavor you want to add or not. You'll use wisdom on the experience of overlaying experience with verbiage.
Yeah, and then there's also the thing of not being adverse to arising of a thought coming up. You can just experience the arising of the thought coming up, And it may actually be useful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The thought may actually be useful, but that what you're talking about is a deeper experience that goes beyond the intellect.
Yeah,
We
and I
rely
think I'm
too much
saying,
on the intellect, and that can block our actual experience and our actual wisdom that might arise that's beyond the intellect.
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm saying that
Yeah, you're saying that this is
you don't experience insight with words.
correct.
Um, so and a memory arose in my mind of it's speaking of Christianity and contemplation. It's in the Gospel of Saint Thomas, which is Apocrypha, but um, it's something like this: when you make the two the one, and the inner and the as the outer, and the outer as the inner, when you make a male and a female into a single one, so the male be not male and the female be not female. When you make a hand in the place of a hand, and a foot in the place of a foot, and an image in the place of an image, then shall you enter the kingdom.
Hmm.
Well, that's interesting. But I think the point of the sutta is to examine, and it could be for oneself, the cause and effect. We're looking at cause and effect here.
Yeah.
So and we can experience that directly, directly see the harm. But yeah, so there's a balance there. Then
Yeah.
there's a wisdom that arises, because this is like a gradual path, and he's taking these Brahmin youths through this whole systematic approach, and then it goes beyond everything. It's beyond the whole field of perception, the whole scope of perception, which is nibbana. So yeah, you can't get there through intellect, but the maybe thinking about things sometimes is helpful.
Yeah.
Contemplation is helpful at times.
Yeah.
And
That's
even
a good
thinking,
example.
yeah. So this the point of this this first passage. I don't think he's saying completely throw it out, and that's a misunderstanding of this.
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's great. Yeah.
in fact, I spend a lot of time contemplating, but one of my senses is that the path isn't about building up something; it's about taking away everything.
Mhm. Well, it's
You
about
know,
letting go, relinquishing. It's
yeah, and
yeah,
and surrendering all your concepts and letting the Dhamma flow through your heart.
yeah.
Um,
So we have just 6 minutes left, and I'm wondering if anyone else had a
Add questions or comments?
question or comments. So you're satisfied with this?
I will, just from that little blip that came up at the beginning in regards to, Salha supporting and also manipulating bhikkhunis, maybe it's a good thought that this happened after that, and that this bhikkhu is giving some training to someone whose morality, he was obviously well versed in the training of the Brahmin, and yet his morality was not up to snuff.
Yeah, we don't know when that was happening.
Yeah, so we don't know the order of that, but I'm liking to imagine that the misdirection was happening before, and that maybe this is a direction to remediate that. Holly, I saw a hand. Let's see. There.
I thank you for. I like your mention about the last paragraph and the people that the speaker was speaking to were from youth from Brahman and Upanishad background. That just feels rich to me, and I'm not fully seeing why, but part of it is I come from a different background. I mean, I grew up with atheist parents and not in the Christian tradition, but I grew up in a Judeo-Christian culture. And I know, and I just watch how Buddhism, the teachings don't change, but some of it, the delivery does, being American or Western Buddhism. So I just like that you brought out that that the audience was who they were, and the Buddha was, or the teacher was speaking to that to kind of help those people make a segue.
Yeah, yeah, and helping to like break words that had such a definition that they'd literally just learned from heritage, and then helping them to question that interpretation of the word and giving them something more freeing. I really appreciate that skill and think we need to do that with modern languaging as well, as long as we don't leave the teaching of the Buddha and put it in and fry the words of Christianity, of Judaism, of atheism, of, you know, so that they can come back to the truth that actually is freeing.
So we should probably close. Well, thank you all for your kind listening. I appreciate that. And we will be meeting Tuesday mornings regularly, health and other considerations, internet, is the best we can. We'll be here at 8, and so if you care to, we can close with paying respects to the Buddha. If you have an image in your room, you can bow to it. If you don't care to do that, you can turn off your machine and go. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namah. All right. Good to see everyone. And then we're gonna
Thank you, Ayas.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Well, we're on retreat. I think maybe
Yeah.
all of us are on retreat next week. So
Yeah, some of us, definitely some of you will be off, so please have a fantastic Cloud Mountain retreat time, those who are going. And we're off to Alms
Oh.
Round soon today, so
Should we turn the recording?
Okay.
we probably should turn the recording off. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Maybe we'll edit somehow to clip this little bit off.
It's
Ah.
okay.
What a great the day, like the